Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Glue Stick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full time so that you don't have to. Golems. They are actually, there's a lot of different golems. They differ from the broader category that they're included in, which is called constructs. Golems are the old school version. They first appeared in the original Greyhawk supplement in 1975, so this was written by Gary Gygax and Robert J. Kuntz, and they have become one of the most well-known creatures of the Dungeons & Dragons game. If you have been playing for a while and not fought against, with, or simply encountered a golem, well, you probably will soon. If you are the dungeon master of your group, I can practically guarantee that after you watch this series of videos, you will. So sit back, grab a beverage, we're about to get deeply nerdy. Wikipedia tells us that golems are magical constructs made of inert matter animated by high-level spellcasters through the use of spells, powerful spells, during magical rituals. The main aspect differentiating one type of golem from another is the material from which it's made. There are 4 standard types of golems. From weakest to strongest, they are flesh golems, clay golems, stone golems, and iron golems. The flesh golem is created from human remains, and the others are created from earthen components, clay, stone, and iron respectively. Virtually any material can be used to make a golem, and hundreds of different types of such creatures have been described from one edition or another of the game. A dizzying number really, and there are a vast plethora of subdivisions in each category. So stone golems can be sand or crystal or mirror golems, iron can be adamantine and silver golems, flesh can be demon parts or even an ooze golem. We shall talk about the magic used to create them, the history of the golem in the multiverse, talk more about more spectacular varieties, and come up with some extremely devious tricks you can play on your friends using golems in your D&D campaigns. First, let's check their history in the game's various editions. Flesh, iron, and stone golems were first, followed by clay shortly after in the first version of the game. Advanced D&D had them as well. The basic edition of D&D from 1977 introduced amber, bone, bronze, mud, wood, obsidian, silver, rock, and also the Golem, iron gargoyle, and living statues of crystal, iron, and rock, which are a lot like highly refined golems with special properties. The crystal statues were weakest but can be made to appear as anything, including human. Iron living statues were very dangerous to attack, as non-magical metal items had a chance of being stuck in them and could only be removed upon the statue's death. This was typical of the gotcha monsters created to flummox players overly reliant on the character's equipment. Rock statues were the most durable and had the added complication of being able to shoot balls of lava. Just the sort of monster you would want to fight on, say, a rickety wooden bridge over a perilous chasm. Next we had the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, and things started to get crazy for the golem menagerie. We had lesser golems and greater golems now, a subdivision between clay and flesh or iron and stone. We had brain, hammer, and spider stone golems. Spider stone golems were the drow 4-armed golems that had spider motifs. The brass minotaur, burning man and phantom flyer, the furnace and radiant golems, Dole, glass, ash, chitin, and sand golems, diamond, emerald, and ruby golems. This was the series of gemstone golems. 3rd and 3.5 edition went into a fury of specialized and weird golem invention. We have the Thaim, the adamantine, mithril, alchemical, rope, puzzle with different sized bits, which are each individual golems, of course. The Minigon, the one arm, the old one guardian, the chain, dragon flesh, and stained glass golems. Equine, blood gem, demon flesh, and hellfire golems. Dragon bone, drake stone, iron worm, and planner golems, including gloom, prismatic, and morphian. Another version of the Ash, the Battle Glory, Gear, Mindstrike, Perfector, Sentinel of Mythidair, the Shackleblock, Valor Hammer, and Wood Wrath golems. Then we had the Hangman, Shadesteel, lesser and greater variety, Ice, Grave Dirt, Tombstone, Cadaver, Fang, Coral, and Incarnate golems. 4th edition was relatively tame and just had updated versions of a selection of standard golems along with bone and chain golems. Amazing, really. I mean, I could make videos about every single one of these construct types, and I probably will. And hey, a couple of them really tugged at my interest. So what is a Golem and a Minigon? Let's find out. Well, a Golem is simply a collection of dragon parts, stitched together and animated in the style of a flesh golem. A Golem, or dragon golem, lacks the breath weapon and spellcasting abilities of true dragons. It usually prefers to land in the midst of a group of opponents and lash out in all directions with its teeth, claws, wings, and tail. They're basically immune to magic. Fire and cold-based effects do slow them down, and electricity actually heals them, as it does with all flesh golems. Everything else just bounces off them or fizzles. Miniguns look very similar to regular iron golems at first glance. They're a specialised clockwork variation with advanced and somewhat evil animation rituals that bind the souls of dead minotaurs and an elemental of fire into the heart of the construct, giving it additional speed and ferocity. This is quite unusual, as we'll come to discover towards the end of this video. So, how does one create a golem? What is the legend from mythology that these monsters are based on? In 5th edition D&D, we have a very rare, wondrous item called a Manual of Golems. It says that this tome contains information and incantations necessary to make a particular type of golem. However, it's no easy feat. The ritual cannot be performed by any spellcaster without at least 5th level spell slots. This means a 10th level wizard, bard, warlock, sorcerer, druid or cleric, and a 19th level ranger, paladin or artificer. You may think that an artificer would be the best class at making a magical construct, but nope, they suck at it against all forms of reason. The best they can do is make an alchemical homunculus, which is basically a tiny alchemical golem. If it was an actual homunculus, it would share some life force with the artificer and have some modicum of independent thought, but no, it's clearly a golem requiring instructions from its creator in order to do anything other than perform the dodge action. Honestly, what were they thinking? Requiring extensive tools and material components in order to work the character's magic is penalty enough. I'm not sure if they put too much thought into the artificer or class or not enough. It makes no sense. It's just poorly conceived fan service. Moving on. Any creature that attempts to read the Manual of Golems who is not a powerful spellcaster of the required level of experience will have their mind assaulted supernaturally, taking 66 psychic damage. To create a golem, you must spend the time shown on the table working without interruption with the manual at hand and resting no more than 8 hours per day. I should mention that this manual, the information contained within it, is ancient beyond reason. This was not a creation of modern arcane science. This was not a creation even of the most recent human empires. One of the reasons why you take 66 psychic damage if you're not a sufficiently powerful spellcaster is because your mind just can't handle the alien thoughts it contains. You must also pay the specified cost to purchase supplies. Once the spellcaster finishes creating the golem, the book is consumed in eldritch flames for no obvious reason. The golem then becomes animate. Then, when the ashes of the manual are sprinkled on it, completely sidelining the cool mythology of how the golem is animated and kind of insulting Jewish folklore at the same time, again for no good reason, the golem is now under the caster's control, and it understands and obeys the caster's spoken commands. It can't communicate itself. Obviously, it doesn't have a brain. This is complicated. And it's a costly ritual that is more about engineering for the bulk of the time, a little bit of artistry ability, and quite a lot of arcane capability. Even the simple clay golem requires 65,000 gold pieces in materials and 30 days of solid 8 hours per day work. The flesh golem requires 60 days and 50,000 gold pieces. The stone golem needs 80,000 gold pieces and 90 days, while the iron golem takes 120 days and 100,000 gold pieces. So see you later, everybody. I'm off to seal myself mysteriously away in a laboratory/engineering workshop for the good part of a third of a year. That is a lot of time and effort. While you think the flesh golem is a bit expensive, as it is just corpses stitched together, there is complex wiring, alchemical fluid replacement, metal structural enhancements, and keeping the sensitive sensory organs as moist and ready during the building process. It's quite a challenge for a society that can cast Ray of Frost but can't build a refrigerator. Well, they technically can, as will be shown in my next video on Netheril. So, what are the real-world origins of this concept of a mystically created being? Where does this idea come from? In Jewish folklore, the oldest stories of golems date to early Judaism. In the Talmud, Adam was initially created as a golem, technically, when his dust was kneaded into a shapeless husk. The name Adam actually means red clay. Like Adam, all golems are created from mud by those close to divinity, but No anthropogenic golem is fully human. Early on, the main disability of the golem was its inability to speak. Sanhedrin describes Rava creating a man. He sent this man to Ravzera. Ravzera spoke to him, but he did not answer, and Ravzera said, "You were created by the sages. Return to your dust." During the Middle Ages, passages from the Sefer Yetzirah book of creation were studied as a means to create and animate a golem. Although there is little in the writings of Jewish mysticism that supports this belief, a fact often obscured by those overly obsessed with mystical mysteries, it was believed that golems could be activated by an ecstatic experience induced by the ritualistic use of various letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the Kabbalah, forming a Shem, or one of the names of the Abrahamic God, wherein the Shem was written on a piece of paper and inserted into the mouth or in the forehead of the golem. You can see this clearly represented in the location of the mystical Gulra symbol on the forehead of Warforged, and recently there's a Netflix series where the golem had a symbol etched in the clay of its forehead. A golem is inscribed with Hebrew words in some tales, for example some versions of Chelm and Prague, as well as the Polish tales and versions from the Brother Grimm stories, such as the word emet or truth in Hebrew written on its forehead. The golem could be deactivated by removing the letter Aleph in emet, thus changing the inscription from truth to death. Rabbi Jacob ben Shalom arrived in Barcelona, from Germany in 1325 and remarked that the law of destruction is a reversal of the law of creation. One source credits an 11th century man of Jewish faith named Solomon ibn Gabriel, who with creating a golem, possibly female, for household chores. Joseph del Medigo attested in 1625 that many legends of this sort were current at the time in the 1600s, particularly in Germany. The earliest known written account of how to create a golem can be found within the writings called Sodei Razaya by Eliza ben Judah of the city of Worms in Germany sometime in the late 12th and 13th century. This rich Jewish folklore sprang up alongside the rich German folklore and is much a cultural adaptation by those early Jewish people as anything else. The German people had a lot of folklore, so they came up with a lot of folklore. From there, the mythology spread across Europe and the world. It's not so shocking that Gary Gygax would think to include golems in the first edition of the game, as his ethnic background traced straight back to Switzerland. But by our modern age, golems are fairly well-known mythical creations across countless tales. For example, the golem found in the pages of Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels, Feet of Clay being a particular favourite of mine. A common theme in these tales of golems is exploitation of the power of creation and the lack of due care in its use. This is one of the main reasons creating golems in D&D is so difficult and expensive. A caster can, in theory, make an unlimited number of golems and set them to tasks without the restriction of being able to control only a small number at a time, such as the case with undead, and why hordes of undead created and controlled by just one caster are almost unheard of. Undead are also vulnerable to being turned and destroyed by clerics and such, while golems have very few vulnerabilities. While it is true that instructing a golem to act takes away the actions of the controller, these simple instructions can be followed by the golem without the controller needing to pay any more attention to them. The first golems created in D&D Multiverse arrived very early on. We know that both primordials, entities, and later the divine gods both have the capacity to create living beings out of raw matter. The golem has long been a simple version of this process, later becoming stolen knowledge used by the living creatures of the mortal world to create artificial life. The giants and later the dwarves were particularly good at this. Elves concentrated more on vital energies and the flow of elemental forces, in part inspired by the dragons, who are conduits of elemental power, as well as by their own nature. Giants created Titanic Construct during the genocidal war against the dragons, called the Thousand Year War. This construct, called Vonindod, stood 80 feet tall and was humanoid-shaped with a horned helm and a greatsword. It was almost entirely composed of adamantine with huge rubies for its eyes. The Titan of Death is the translation of its name. Vonindod was destroyed during the ancient battles between dragons and giants. Some myths also say that the giants willingly deconstructed it as a sort of an armistice. Pieces of it were lost during the Battle of the Remainder, what was at least partly dismantled and scattered throughout the north of Faerun. It was not until an ambitious fire giant named Duke Zalto that any attempt was made to reassemble the pieces of the construct. He sent many of his minions out in the north to seek the remaining pieces of Vonandot, using specially created rods of Vonandot to act as divining tools. He was able to assemble most of the head, the torso, one hand and a forearm, and the great sword in his ancestral home of Ironslag, but lacked a fire hot enough to rekindle the forge there to continue the work. There may well be several other ancient golems of similar magnitude scattered and deactivated around the lost corners of the Forgotten Realms, particularly buried beneath the slowly revitalizing desert region of Anarok. The former Empire of Netheril had abundant golems and other magical artifacts that were buried when the Empire was destroyed. Netheril was a militant magical nation. The wizards in control of the Empire favoured forceful methods to resolve social and political problems. They revered great soldiers of the past, and they absolutely had no problem at both using whatever means to achieve their goals, but also of inventing weapons of warfare, the likes of which Toril had not seen for many thousands of years. Before them, the elves had long ago waged brutal totalitarian warfare against other nations, and most notably amongst themselves. Before them, the dragons and the giants. Before them, the ancient creator races and successive global empires across what was once the supercontinent of Faerun. In all of these eras, there was the creation, use, and abuse of golems, and unless destroyed or otherwise permanently deactivated, golems never age, they never wear out, they never stop. Across the world of Toril, scattered on far-flung islands, entangled in exotic jungles, buried under the shifting desert dunes, built into the foundations of ancient ruins, frozen in slowly moving glaciers, sunk to the bottom of deep lakes and dangerous seas, there are most likely thousands and thousands of very old, very dangerous golems, just waiting for the right person to be in the wrong location, doing exactly what is needed at exactly the wrong time to activate them once more and throw all manner of disaster into the mix of an already quite deadly world. Golems lurk, lost and forgotten under fresh young forests and fields, much like landmines carelessly left behind after some prehistoric war. Just a golem blindly lashing out in a frenzy is bad enough, but some of them were given instructions before they got trapped, which they will still try to carry out. And if this was something like kill the king, they will kill the first king that they find, even if that original target died 2,000 years ago. An iron golem given magical tools and tasked with digging a shaft into the ground will dig until they reach the depth required. But, in the past, a golem told to just dig a hole until instructed to stop may very well dig until there is a sudden catastrophic release of lava or some such. Golems built for war may possibly be repurposed by local farmers to methodically slice corn cobs with a wicked set of scythe blade arms, the lethal appearance of the war machine softened somewhat by a straw hat and floppy ill-fitting checkered shirt. Merchants might do a trade in recovered but supposedly fully deactivated war machines, sold as dinner party conversation pieces, much like old suits of armour propped up on display in castle walls. The incredible labour force provided by a golem set to work on any mundane routine task certainly encourages the spread of information on how to make them, but also makes that knowledge a commodity of extreme value. The ritual for creating even a simple golem would be a closely held secret. Any adventurer who stumbles across a manual of golem creation has both an amazing opportunity and an awesome burden on their hands. I would say that these tomes are very rare, not just because the act of using them to infuse life into a golem consumes the magical artifact, but also more than a few of them have been found only to end up locked away in the most secure vaults and hiding places. Extremely high-level magic users don't have to destroy the manual in order to make a copy of the manual, but such an act requires an unspecified amount of research and resources on how to lock that vital power into the replicated manuals. 5th edition tells us that this requires capturing a simple elemental spirit, basically no more complicated than finding and catching an elemental insect, so to speak. It's got no memory, personality, or ambition. It just exists, moves, consumes, and replicates like any bug in our world would. There are countless millions of these types of things in the elemental plane. The main reason that spirits of Earth are used as specifically is because they already infuse solid matter. They're not dangerous as fire or air or water elementals, and they have the strength and endurance required to survive the process of capture and storage. It's still an act of evil to confine and enslave a living being, even a non-sentient one, but this is not a concern that has ever stood in the way of any but the most principled celestials. Once summoned to the material plane, the Earth Spirit is left with no matter to inhabit, but the manual of Golems. It's basically funneled into it desperately. So they leap into it, and in one of the most powerful spells still functional on the continent of Faerun is used to imprison the spirit of the into the manual until it is bound into a constructed frame. Normally, and that's why it's very, very high level spellcasters, because that's a 9th level spell to create a manual of Golems. Normally, arcanists will enlist the services of master crafters and artists to fashion a body from clay, stone, or iron. The act of creating a flesh golem is just as complex, but it's not really alive, nor is it an undead zombie. The imprisonment may actually borrow from the original folklore, include a scrap of paper or a gemstone with a magical marking on it, the Gulra of the Warforged, the holy word of the original Golems. Because of the imprisonment spell, it being a 9th level abjuration spell, any attempt to dispel the animating magic of a golem must be cast using a 9th level spell slot. Most often, golems are crafted with a special amulet that is used to command them, and they will not listen to or respond to any communication except from one who possesses their specific amulet. Shield Guardians are a relatively recent addition to the types of available golems, particularly on the world of Toril, where quite a few of them are manufactured and traded for on the gnome-occupied island of Lantern, not too far from Chult or Kalmashan. These come in a variety of models, the simplest being 9 feet tall, nearly 3 meters tall, and weighing over 1,200 pounds or 540 kilograms, and composed of wood, stone, and iron. In a way, they are like a crude test prototype for the far, far more complex Warforged. Each Shield Guardian is keyed to its specific special magical amulet. If the amulet is destroyed, the Guardian will cease to function until it's keyed to a new replacement amulet, and these are quite expensive. The reason they're called Shield Guardians is they function to physically protect their master, whoever has the amulet. In 5th edition, they do this by providing a +2 bonus, a boost to armor class. So when I put 2 of them in an encounter location, I have each other wear the amulet of the other Guardian. Thus, they boost each other's armor class by 2 points. They also function as spell storage devices, so I load them up with a spell to summon a wall of fire, for example. 2 Shield Guardians can very effectively hold a group of intruders at bay in a section of a building, castle or dungeon until reinforcements arrive. They are quite capable of taking an enormous amount of damage, as these things also regenerate each round that they're active quite quickly. And if you watch the recorded weekly Spelljammer campaign sessions on this channel, you will see just such a fight in the next couple of sessions I upload. It was a brutal fight, and since all of the combatants were either Warforged, Modrons or Golems, it was the most heavy metal fight I have ever seen in D&D. We shall certainly continued in a more detailed look at each of the individual types of golems, but for now, please like, subscribe, check out my Patreon for more exclusive content and all the full scripts for these videos, buy some merchandise, wear your geek with pride, check out Patron Blades for a mighty smooth shave, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.